Nama saya Ong Chen, selaku Head of Investment di Spring Indonesia. Okay, let's get started. Dengan ringkas saja global outlook. I don't have any other slides, it's only just this one. Jadi, we have been saying for the whole of this year, 2022, ada beberapa key themes yang terjadi. Economic slowdown secara global has been downgraded continuously since the start of the year. Tahun depan growth-nya lebih rendah secara global dibanding tahun ini. So globally, the outlook is challenging. To use the word that we saw just now. Inflation has been the problem. Continues to be high, but we may have seen a little bit of the peaks in the US. But interest rates continue to be going up. December masih ada rate hike di US. They're not convinced yet. But as we move into next year, jadi the three themes ada sedikit yang mengalami reversal. Jadi slowdown-nya berterusan. Inflation yang kelihatannya mungkin peaking. We need to see confirmation in the US especially that it comes down. But that's one of the key things that could happen. Kemudian interest rates, the pace of rate hikes are slowing. It's still going up, tapi pace of hikes are slowing. We'll get a confirmation in the December Fed rate hike. And by next year, hopefully, it either stabilizes or can come down. And I think Pak Heki can talk more about the direction of interest rates. Jadi untuk tahun depan, we are looking at two potential turning points. Satunya, I didn't touch about this. The first one is China. The two things that matter in the world, the two big economies. Satu yang di China untuk reopening. Will they reopen by March? For example, yang NPC ini meetingsnya sampai Maret. Jadi the expected timeline is around the first quarter of next year. There should be more moves towards reopening China. They need to reopen because the economy is in a difficult position dan lockdown-nya jauh lebih lama dibanding negara-negara lain di dunia. Right, this is fantastic. China has been locked down for 3 years, yeah. So that's fantastic. Kemudian balik lagi ke US, because of the rate hikes, they should be nearing recession. It is intended. The US wants to go very close to recession. That's intended by the Fed. But once they get close to that, they should start to ease off. Jadi itu juga satu. Ya bisa dilihat sebagai turning point. But what is the timing? First quarter, first half, second half, itu masih belum ada kepastian. Right, but as investors, then we need to start paying attention 6 months ahead, 12 months ahead, and that's what the outlook is about. Kemudian inflation rata-ratanya seharusnya mulai turun. Okay, so that's global. My intention is to focus a lot more on Indonesia. Tapi kalau ada pertanyaan nanti kita bisa lagi untuk global. The review of asset class performance. Just to refer to what Pak Alan said, we should be thankful. Ya, kalau dibandingkan performance ini di US dollar, Indonesian assets like equity atau bonds, ini sovereign di sini berarti government bonds. Walaupun US dollar returns-nya sedikit negatif, rupiah returns is positive for equity and quite flat for bonds. It is far outperforming the rest of the world. A lot of other asset classes. Kemudian kalau dilakukan ranking performance asset class yang sama, yang 18 di sini, kalau diurutkan setiap tahun annual returns, adakah urutannya pertama atau yang paling akhir? You can see red is for equities and gray is for bonds, Indonesian bonds. What am I trying to say here? Ada dua message sebenarnya. Yang pertama, the last 2 years on a relative basis, has been quite okay for Indonesian equities. Yeah. But I think the other message is, once the performance is relatively good, next year with the two turning points that I talked about, China reopening and US interest rates peaking, what does that mean for the relative performance? I think most investors will say there should be other asset classes that perform. Yeah. So that's the thing that we need to watch out for next year. But my focus is more on the domestic economy. Okay. I said two messages. Sebenarnya yang satu lagi message-nya adalah buat investor yang bisa ngambil exposure di luar. This also represents the advantage of having a multi-asset portfolio yang bisa invest di luar, but not all investors have that mandate. You notice at the start we have a multi-asset team. Ya, multi-assetnya bisa antara equity dan bonds, ataupun antara asset class rupiah dengan yang berbasisnya US dollar atau berbasisnya equity Asia dan sebagainya. That multi-asset approach, once you blend the returns, returnsnya jadi stabil. Yeah, so sorry to step away from the outlook here, but just wanted to mention the advantage of diversification. Yeah, and it's something that as Eastspring we always encourage, which is diversification. Nanti di ujungnya I think we have a question on balance funds. Okay, masuk ke domestic. Yeah, so this year has been actually quite good. We have been seeing anchored for volatility. It's been volatile externally. Di Indonesia juga sempat volatile ya kalau equity. Kalau bonds mungkin nggak mengalami tekanan terus, but you still earn coupon. Total returns are close to flat. So I think this is one of those rare years where equity outperform bonds di Indonesia. Ya, adakah tahun depan the result is the same? We'll have to see. I think we will try to answer that together. But from equity perspective, we still think that it is a positive year. Yeah, returns di equity masih positif, trendnya masih bagus. Okay, so yang external risk selama tahun ini tampaknya tidak terlalu besar di Indonesia because of exports. Yeah, later on we have a chart for current account deficit. Growth has recovered 5.7% in the third quarter, dan driversnya selama ini adalah exports ya, berbanding dengan imports. So a lot of the recovery is still driven by exports. A lot of the stability of the rupiah is driven by exports. Jadi siklus ini jauh berbeda dengan siklus yang the last 10 years. We've been saying this quite a lot. What is in the exports? It is the exports of nickel downstream industries. Yeah, yang tumbuh di 9 bulan ekspornya sebesar 24 billion US dollars, dan kontribusinya terhadap trade surplus. Trade surplus Indonesia selama 9 bulan is 15 billion dollars. Contribution from iron and steel is $9 billion. Jadi 60+% of the trade surplus came from this industry yang 10 tahun yang lalu did not exist. Yeah, 10 years ago, Tsingshan invested in Morowali Industrial Park 2013. Then in 2014, the nickel ore export ban, buat yang masih ingat atau masih belum masuk di market, export ban. Yeah. At that time, nobody really figured out what it's about. Fast forward 10 years, ini hasilnya export ban, jadi harus masuk ke downstreaming. Downstreaming hasilnya trade surplus tahun ini. So this year's stability has its roots 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago. And the policy, economic policy, harus long term. Dan ini salah satu yang bisa dikatakan paling berhasil. Of course, there are a lot of other examples. Let's say Transjava. Belum kelihatan economic benefits-nya mungkin, but social benefits, I think that's a lot. During COVID, you can travel, you can drive, you don't have to fly. I think that's one of the benefits. So long-term economic planning is important. Hari ini kita nggak bahas the next 10 years of economic planning. Kita lebih fokus ke the next 1 year. But if you want to talk about the next 10 years, we can find another time for that. So back to this, GDP selama ini mungkin lebih didorong dari ekspor. There is some recovery from household consumption, tapi masih lagging. Okay, and the key is that Indonesia is more than 50% consumption. Ini satu sektor yang harus didorong, right? And the recovery has been slow. So the external picture has been good. This is another slide to show that growth next year is 5%. Jadi back to trend growth mungkin 4.8, 4.9, but it's a reasonably good level of growth. The old problems are no longer existent. The old problems are kalau growth-nya terlalu tinggi, imports-nya melonjak, current account-nya defisit sekali, 2 kali, and then rupiah melemah, the growth has to slow down, right? It goes through a very deep cycle, up and down. Recently, current account is in surplus because of the exports. 2 tahun ke depan, if the exports stay strong, then economic growth can continue. Domestic consumption can continue. It does not need to slow down. Ya, jadi siklusnya berbeda dengan 10 tahun yang lalu, di mana setiap kali accelerate harus direm. Why? Because not enough exports, not enough domestic savings. Ya, kalau para ekonom yang bilang this current account deficit is your domestic savings. Kalau nggak cukup, ya jadinya negatif. Sekarang Indonesia sort of has enough domestic savings karena bisa ambil uang dari luar secara ekspor ditarik ke dalam. Okay, so that's economics. Dan dengan adanya ekspor tersebut, domestic growth can continue in a much more stable manner. Ya, jadi outlook yang dulunya mungkin 1 year is good, 1 year is bad, dan selalu harus memperhatikan current account deficit. For the next couple of years, maybe we don't need to worry about that. Yeah. Dan kalau coming back to this, kalau smelter yang di-develop 138, kebanyakannya belum selesai. So as they are completed, the exports will continue to rise. Jadi outlook ke depan, beberapa tahun ke depan masih bisa di-balance ya. Indonesia needs exports so that you can import barang konsumsinya karena kebanyakannya masih import ya. Jadi that's the balance that you need to achieve. So I think that's very important as investors for us to be aware of. Ini perubahan yang cukup signifikan. Because 10 years, the last 10 years, all we know is current account deficit. The next 10 years itu lebih ke balance. It's not necessarily going to be surplus continuously, tapi lebih ke balance. Dan ekonominya akan berubah secara karakteristiknya dalam situasi current account lebih balance. Okay. So the next government is in a very good position. The last 10 years, unfortunately, ada ini kan. But the next government, next 5 years, next 10 years, is in a very good position to capitalize on this economic situation. Ya, ini satu detail lagi. Kalau 2024 di sini kelihatannya negatif 1.5. Saya ngambil angkanya dari Bloomberg. Bisa juga ini akhirnya akan di-revise mungkin nggak sampai minus 1.5. Yeah, because it's a bit too far away for economists to forecast. Pergerakan harga komoditi juga agak susah untuk diprediksi. Yeah, but if you take this trend, 2023 is almost balanced, which is a very good position to be in. Yeah. Jadi ini basisnya untuk domestic growth. Okay, yeah. So sidetrack a little bit. Elections, ya, nanti akan di ujungnya akan dibahas elections juga. The two elections that we had, the last two, di 2014 dan 2018. Just keep this graphic in mind, nanti akan dibahas lagi. We talk about what is the performance of the equity market waktu election year. Sebenarnya the conclusion I'll tell you now is that it has less to do with politics, it has more to do with economics. Kalau di 2014 performance-nya positif. Mengapa? Karena current account deficit-nya kejadian di 2013. Marketnya turun dulu. Then after that 2014, the market is recovering. Current account deficit masih deficit tapi membaik. So investors look at the trend, trend yang membaik, they sort of get confident again. Tapi 2019, current account deficit baru kejadian, and investors and rupiah was weak. Jadi that affects the market performance. But we'll talk about elections later. Just keep this in mind. So what this sort of means is that kalau elections kejadian di sini 2024, and your current account is quite good, so I think we don't have to worry about elections as a negative factor, because economy cukup bagus. Okay, on to domestic economy. This is my focus. Kalau ekonomi Indonesia harus bangkit, growth-nya bisa sustain, we need Java. Right? For the longest time, Java growth has been below national growth. Yeah, because all the smelters itu di Sulawesi, di Maluku, Papua. Ya, jadi growth-nya tinggi sekali, right? Compared to Java, which is 5.8. You look at this trend. Ini 4 provinsi di Jawa, DKI, Jawa Barat, Jawa Tengah, Jawa Timur. Before pandemic, all of it is measured against national GDP above. Jadi pertumbuhannya lebih tinggi berbanding nasional. Pandemic, second year pandemic, sekarang kebanyakan masih negatif. DKI udah positif, Jawa Barat udah positif. But it's still lower than historical, di mana secara historis bisa sampai 100 basis points di atas nasional. So we need this to recover. Yeah, that's Java. Lagipun udah underperform selama 2-3 tahun, right? So fingers crossed. Of course, reopening is important. Dan impact of reopening is the highest for Jawa and Bali. I think Bali udah kelihatan. But if you look at foreign tourist arrivals di Indonesia, levelnya masih baru setengah dari levelnya 2019. This is September numbers, right? After reopening for a few months, tourist arrivals per bulan masih kurang lebih setengah per bulan. So there's still a lot of catch up to do. Kemudian train ridership, penumpang di kereta is only 60, about 2/3, 2/3 dari levelnya 2019. Berarti aktivitas baik di DKI ataupun di Jawa di mana ada jalur kereta api has not recovered completely. Yeah, I think if you look at the Jasa Marga numbers, mungkin traffic numbers dia belum tulis sepenuhnya. So what I'm just trying to say is that there's room for Java to recover, right? And it's actually quite important. Are the policies aimed at Java? Not exactly. Ya, dari sisi pemerintahnya nggak bisa langsung push Java economy, but from a relative perspective, sejak dulu Java has been outperforming. We need Java to improve. Ya, dari sisi tingkat pekerjaan, sejak COVID yang kebanyakannya merah, sudah mulai menghijau. These are the top 9 sectors di Indonesia secara manufacturing, secara output. Top 9 plus mining. Mining sebenarnya agak kecil ya, kontribusinya cuma 1%. But it has been quite green in the last 1 year, 1.5 years. What is the point of this slide? Sudah ada pemulihan dari sisi employment, but there are big sectors that are still falling behind. By manufacturing, 5% compared to 2019. Kalau secara nasional is 9% above 2019. Jadi manufacturing masih 5%. Construction is only 2%. You can link this to a few of the government policies. Ya, kalau pemerintah mau attract investasi dari China atau Korea masuk ke sektor seperti electric vehicles dan sebagainya, that's manufacturing. Actually, Jawa Tengah, they're still trying to attract mid or low manufacturing seperti sepatu atau tekstil dan sebagainya. That's manufacturing. Construction, maybe the construction will move to Sumatera buat jalan tol atau EKN yang di Kalimantan. So maybe less, a bit less in Java. Transportation, dengan reopening, I think transportation should continue to recover by dari air travel atau rail atau transportasi darat. Dan sebagainya. So what I'm trying to say here is that there is room for the economy to recover. Tingkat penganggurannya masih di atas level sebelum pandemi. And tingkat pengangguran tadi masalahnya masih di perkotaan. And this is an old problem which has not been addressed. But Indonesia still has a job problem. Yeah, not enough jobs in Indonesia. Walaupun tingkat penganggurannya is reported as 5.9, but there is underreported unemployment. What I'm referring to is underemployment. Jadi di Indonesia kalau definisi bekerja itu paling sedikit 1 jam seminggu itu udah dihitung bekerja. It's not 5 days a week. It's just 1 hour a week. Dihitung bekerja, so that's actually not really working. Yeah. The definition is very loose. There's a lot of underemployment that needs to be focused on. Take the statistics with a grain of salt. Yeah. Tapi memang menunjukkan ada trend perbaikan. There's still a lot that needs to be done. Okay, kemudian minimum wage, ada pros and cons-nya ya minimum wage. Dengan formula untuk 2023 yang baru, right? So the cap is 10%. The formula is inflation plus GDP times a factor, the labor contribution factor. Hasilnya adalah minimum wage upah minimum tahun depan naiknya antara 5% sampai maksimum 10%. So that number, whatever it is higher than the last 2 years because last 2 years we don't know. There's almost 0% minimum wage. You'll come back. There's a good and bad. Jadi goodnya, obviously consumption is good. Yang badnya buat employers ya. Jadi ada transfer lah, harus transfer dari profitabilitas perusahaan balik lagi ke upah minimum. But from a consumption point of view, it should be good. Lagipun kalau dilihat gaji rata-rata, pertumbuhan gaji rata-rata, in the last 5 years, 3 years, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, pertumbuhannya rata-rata di bawah 5% per tahun. It's very slow, right? Even though the economy is growing, tapi wages have slowed down. Inflasinya juga rendah lah, to be fair. Yeah, but what we're saying is high inflation, gajinya mulai naik lagi. So you are compensated. In real terms, overall net we think is positive for consumption. Kalau perhitungan dari ekonom BRI dan Reksa, mungkin kontribusinya di consumption hampir 0,5% terhadap GDP. But there's pros and cons ya. It goes up for consumption, it comes down for companies' profitability. Yeah, kemudian tahun depan juga social safety net, the total spending by government untuk social assistance, subsidi dan sebagainya hampir flat, turun 5%. So social assistance is still quite high compared to pre-COVID. Ini cukup sangat dibutuhkan. Why? Because the employment situation is still worse than pre-COVID, right? Kemudian ada disbursement of social assistance. Let's do just some math ya. Kalau labor force di sini 190 juta. Sorry, let me do this again. Kalau recipient untuk BLT, bantuan tunai, langsung tunai, 20 juta household. Right, compare it to the labor force, 140 juta. So one household, maybe one person works, itu lebih dari 10% dari labor force. So that's why BLT is quite a good scheme. Tapi cuman 150,000 per bulan. Okay, so for 4 months. So it's not the whole year, but only 150,000. Now, if you go back to minimum wage study, gaji minimum, let's take the average, say 2 million per month. Yeah, not even 3 million, 2 million. Kalau naiknya 10%, so it's 200,000 per month, right? It's higher than the BLT, and it's going to be for 12 months. And dari 140 juta orang yang bekerja, probably more than half are below minimum wage. Below minimum wage, more than half. Yeah, so 70 million. The recipient 70 million compared to 20 million di sini, and it goes up to 200,000. So that's why minimum wage is bigger impact than BLT, but it's not from the government's pockets, it's from the companies. Yeah, so just a comparison why the impact of this BLT bisa lebih besar dari, minimum wage tadi lebih besar dari BLT. Yeah, so next year is not so much about government spending. Government spending provides the base, tapi the private sector also needs to provide some support. When the elections, there's two things to pay attention to. Elections, memang yang dibahas tadi ya, kalau sebelum atau di tahun pemilu, equity returns rata-ratanya positif. Ya, tapi 2014 berbanding 2019, I talked about it just now. 2019 because of the current account deficit, ya returnsnya lebih rendah. So I think it's more to do with the economy. But if we are interested in statistics, memang tahun pemilu is positive. But tahun pemilu is 2023 or 2024? It's actually 2024. So this one is next year, the following year's outlook. Yeah, pemilu is on the Kayaknya 14th of February. Oh, campaigning ya. Voting day is 14th of February. Jadi semakin maju ya di awal tahun. But if you call 2024 the election year, jadi ekspektasinya 2024 is also positive. This helps me a lot. Okay, kemudian budget untuk election commission it will go up lah by 2.4 times. Yeah, because tahun 2024 is pemilu serentak, right? Regional, national, presidential, semuanya di 14 February, first time in history. So so I think the spending here will go up, and generally itu juga mengacu kepada either the low, income class, which will get some support. Okay, so that's the focus for domestic economy. Banyak yang tidak di-cover ya, let's say government budget, interest rates, I didn't touch that, but we can save that for Q&A, or we can leave that for Pak Hengki to address. Equities outlook, valuations are average, earnings are quite good, tapi earnings growth tahun depan cuma 5%. Kalau harga komoditas turun. Yeah. So if the low end of the range is if you expect coal to come down, jadi earnings growth-nya 5%. Kalau bisa bertahan, then earnings growth-nya lebih tinggi, lebih dari 10%. So very difficult to call on coal prices especially. Yeah, tapi you sort of get a view of the core growth is actually quite high, more than 10%. Kalau perbankan, domestic economy, everything is growing quite decent. But the big variable is coal. Right? Just to give an idea of earnings for next year, where we are right now, let's say 7,000 hopefully we can close the year a bit higher, 7,200. And then if you add either 5% or 10% to that, we're still expecting positive returns for JCI. Yeah, Tara, again 5 to say 10%. Yeah, range-nya, kalau dihitung pakai range mungkin lebih tinggi. Yeah, but if I use EPS growth, then it's say 5% to 10% return for 2023. Kemudian 2024 lebih tinggi. So stay invested, right, for 2 years. If it's as simple as that. So valuations on a PE basis is back to average. It's not too bad, yeah, in terms of the way to start the year. Okay, and where are we invested? Yang pertama perbankan. I think since the COVID recovery, the banking sector is very strong. Whether you look at NPL coverage, whether you look at liquidity, looking at NIMs, banks are far better than pre-COVID. You look at Mandiri share price, all-time high. It's testament of that. We continue to like banks, but yeah, we already know the story, and it's going to be a continuation into 2023. No changes there. I think most investors continue to stay invested. This is a large exposure in our portfolios. And I spoke a lot about consumer. Jadi ini lebih, so consumer this year has been affected by higher input cost, right? Dan inflasinya tinggi, jadi for the consumer this year, your real incomes have fallen, purchasing power has fallen. Tapi untuk tahun depan, before I talk about next year, and of course, household consumption as a percentage of GDP has fallen behind. Yeah, this is economics that I showed just now, the statistics. Dan harus ada recovery. So we are hoping for a recovery, expecting a recovery. Then kalau it plays catch up, then this is sort of the sector to pay more attention to. I talked a lot about the demand side here tadi. If employment comes back, if Java economy improves, if elections come through with more spending, that's more demand side. Tapi on the cost side for consumer companies, yang FMCG, tahun depan the input costs could fall, right? Whether it's CPO has fallen, harga skim milk powder has fallen, wheat maybe is still a bit high, but some of the input costs will fall. Jadi margin buat perusahaan seharusnya membantu juga. So demand is decent for next year, and for the companies the outlook is some of your costs are falling. Mungkin upah minimalnya naik, tapi cost yang lain bisa turun. And furthermore, they've raised prices, right? So whether it's Mayora, ICBP, dan sebagainya, selama 2 tahun terakhir, sejak 2020 ya, they have raised prices by, say, more than 10%. So they have managed to pass on some of these costs. Yeah. Of course, consumer, we can do more Q&A later. It's a very narrow sector. There's only these few names. So in terms of strategy, that's what we can talk about for now. Kemudian next sector is telcos. Telcos ini is we're very hopeful that for next year, kalau demandnya recover, so even for telcos, we'll see the same. Yeah, the cost pressure is not really there for telcos, right? Gaji, the wage component is not very big. The commodity price inflation doesn't affect them this year. Jadi cukup stabil. It's more about are they able to continue to improve their own profitability with rising demand. Ya, jadi tadi consumer kan ada demand is good and cost is falling. Kalau di sini lebih ke if demand continues to rise and they can raise prices, that should be good for telcos. So what I want to really mention is that consumer has got 2 drivers. Satunya top line, the other one is the cost line. Whereas for telcos, it's more the top line. Okay. Dan udah kejadian consolidation, right? So since Indosat merged with Hutch, they have managed to raise prices a little bit. They need to do more lah kalau dari sisi investor. Furthermore, I think data prices are still reasonably cheap. Ya, walaupun kalau beli paket prepaid harganya berubah every month when I look at it. So that's the third sector. Kemudian energy, I didn't touch on energy at all. Tapi dan ini agak susah untuk diprediksi. I think what I can say is that if prices stay flat from here, the stocks are cheap dan dividennya tinggi. But you have to contend with risikonya adalah what if the price comes down and there's volatility in the share price. But the stocks are cheap. So we still maintain some exposure to energy, neutral, slightly overweight. Ini masih ada. But in terms of preference, you can see financials, and then consumer, and then telcos, energy. So that wraps up my slides. Too much time, yeah. Okay, so the key takeaways. I talked about three main global themes. Tadi yang slow down, inflation has been high, interest rates have been rising, but that should change, right, with the two key turning points. With China reopening, that should both boost their own growth. With the hikes that have happened for interest rates this year, by next year we should be watching for sort of flat outlook or interest rates coming down. But that's more external. It may affect foreign relative perception of Indonesia because they can invest elsewhere. Tapi buat kita yang investasinya secara lokal, economic growth is resilient. I talked about the current account. Is really the structural advantage that the country has, that we need to invest in. Kemudian kalau Java economy, household consumption recovers, and the reopening and travel comes back, there's room for recovery. Dan juga beberapa sektor yang preferred, banks, consumer, telcos, and energy. Okay, so I'll stop here.
Sebelumnya saya memperkenalkan diri, nama saya Hengki Tambunan. Saya lead portfolio manager untuk fixed income di Eastspring Investments. We are running the biggest onshore funds in fixed income di Indonesia. In case Bapak Ibu sebagian sudah ada yang invest di kita, hopefully you are happy with the performance. Seperti tadi kata Pak Chan, the fixed income performance this year is quite resilient relative to what we have in a global market. Dan performance of our fixed income is quite okay relative to the peers in the market. Kalau dilihat dari sini menarik ya. Artinya di survei sebelumnya Anda mengatakan bahwa Anda akan invest di fixed income, tetapi 10 orang menyatakan bahwa yield akan tetap di 7 sampai 8. It shows that the market is flat. Market is flat, oke lah ya, Anda masih terima kuponnya di 6%, di 7%, belum pajak dan lain sebagainya, belum management fee. Satu orang super bearish. Nanti saya akan tanya ini, satu orang ini siapa ini yang super bearish? Menarik. Bagi saya ini menarik justru, karena ini outlier ya. Dan ini mungkin salah satunya tadi yang invest di money market. Kalau yang 3 orang 6-7%, oke lah. Tetapi ini masih belum semuanya ya, 3 tambah 11, 14, 15. Undangan kita ada berapa? 40, berarti ada sebagian yang belum mengisi survei. Oke. Kita mulai saja. At least this is a good starting point ya, bahwa sebagian dari Anda menilai bahwa tahun depan itu tidak akan lebih buruk daripada tahun ini. Tadi Cian lebih banyak skip ya, langsung ke domestik. Tetapi sebenarnya market Indonesia, terutama yang fixed income, despite of the relative underweight position of foreign investors di Indonesia recently, itu sangat tergantung dengan apa yang terjadi di pasar global. Oke, ini mungkin mengulang yang tadi. Sebenarnya kita bisa mulai dengan dua sisi. Seperti melihat gelas seperti ini, half full atau half empty. Kalau half empty, kita mulai dengan basicnya dulu bahwa inflasi masih tetap akan tidak terkontrol di US tahun depan. Kemudian Fed akan bereaksi lebih drastis, terus menaikkan suku bunga atau menahan suku bunga tinggi lebih lama daripada yang diperkirakan sebelumnya. Yang ketiga, China reopening itu mungkin tidak akan terjadi lebih cepat daripada yang kita expect. Yang keempat, harga energi masih tetap tinggi karena eskalasi perang Rusia dan Ukraine, kemudian shortage of gas di Europe, sehingga membuat pressure di European market. That's half empty approach. Kalau melihat survei tadi, saya pikir Anda semua hampir setuju bahwa kita akan approach-nya dari sisi half full. Inflation is going to be under control next year. Fed reach the peak. Kemudian China reopen the economy, artinya lockdown COVID itu stops ya. Dan yang terakhir, energy price is going down. Saya mungkin tidak akan membahas banyak ya mengenai half full atau half empty. Tapi kita mulai dulu mungkin dari sini, dari global output tahun depan itu diperkirakan di 2,7%. Saya sudah masuk market itu tahun 2004. Sampai sekarang sudah mengalami 2 resesi. 2008, 2009, kemudian COVID recessions. Rule of thumb, kalau global growth more than 2.5%, we are not in a recession. Ekonomi melambat, tapi we are not in recession. So 2.7 next year base case, actually it's decent enough. That's the base case. Kemudian story mengenai gas. It's a very cerita yang luar biasa bahwa dependence of Europe to Russian gas turun sangat cepat dari 40% hanya 9% sekarang. Kemudian mereka sudah fill the tanks di Europe sampai penuh 95% as of Oktober kalau nggak salah ya. Oke lah, mungkin bisa ke November. Tetapi the story here is that the energy price is going down. China, oke lah, banyak political noise di sini, tapi base case-nya seperti yang tadi saya katakan bahwa China will open the economy. Oke, kembali ke story global ya. Sebelumnya saya bicara mengenai China dulu sedikit. Kenapa China itu penting ya buat kita sebagai bond investors? Karena terlepas dari faktor di ekonomi, kita sebagai investor harus melihat faktor technicalities-nya. Dalam artian apa? Bahwa sebenarnya kita itu part of the global index. Indonesia bond, Indonesia equities are part of the global index, part of the emerging market index. Dan porsi terbesar dari konstituensinya adalah China. Di sini saya punya teman Pak Eric ya, part of the multi asset things. Di Pak Eric ini membuat call developed market versus emerging market. Ya. Kemudian nanti ada call lagi di dalam bonds, developed market bonds, emerging market bonds. Kemudian di dalam emerging market bonds ada call lagi IG bonds atau high yield bonds. Jadi macam-macam. Dan kalau kita lihat flow tahun ini, ya, 170 miliar dolar keluar dari emerging markets. Dan itu dampaknya pasti ke kita, karena kita part of the index. Jadi needless to say bahwa sebenarnya Cina penting karena Cina itu part of the global index. Nah, story-nya tadi ketika Anda mungkin tahu ya, market bulan ini rebound ketika angka inflasi di US lebih rendah daripada yang diperkirakan. Month to date, flow ke emerging market itu kurang lebih 17 miliar dolar. 80% masuk ke China dan Taiwan. So, China is the game changer here. Jadi story-nya China ini penting karena itu sepanjang China story ini positif, the flow will come into emerging market and flow will come to Indonesia as well. Oke, sekarang kita bicara mengenai US dulu. Ini kengerian yang terjadi tahun ini ya, itu karena US. Karena inflasi di US dan kita tertipu cukup banyak dengan statement dari FOMC yang mengatakan bahwa inflation itu transitory. Kita telan-telan tahun 2021 transitory, 2022 enggak transitory ternyata. Inflasinya meledak. Dan kebetulan Oktober itu melandai. Ya, melandai. Kalau dilihat dari kontributornya, itu goods inflation memang turun ya. Dan kalau dilihat dari leading indicator-nya memang itu sudah diperkirakan. Misalnya harga mobil bekas itu turun, dan kalau kita tracking Manheim used car index itu memang sudah turun dari sebelumnya, jadi itu diperkirakan. Kalau rent service, kalau kita lihat dari Zillow memang juga sudah turun. Yang sebenarnya cukup mengkhawatirkan itu sebenarnya service, karena service inflation itu masih tetap tinggi, ya, bahkan masih tetap secara year on year masih tetap bertumbuh. Nah, service itu sebenarnya related dengan apa yang dicapai oleh Fed dengan menaikkan suku bunga ya, yaitu menaikkan unemployment rate di US. Kalau misalnya unemployment-nya itu benar-benar bisa naik ya, ini kan service ini kan sebenarnya relate dengan wage growth ya, pertumbuhan gaji, pertumbuhan upah di Amerika. Dan salah satu proxy yang paling bisa memprediksi itu sebenarnya quit rate ya. Sebelum COVID itu quit rate itu nggak pernah di atas 3% ya. On average itu probably around 2.7, 2.6%. Setelah COVID naik ke 3,4%. Pressure di wage membuat wage growth itu meningkat, dan itu yang ditakutkan. Tetapi kalau kita lihat trennya sekarang, ini ya, trennya sekarang itu approaching 2.8, 2.7 lah ya. So we are heading into the right direction on wages. Oke. Di sini yang dahsyatnya market tahun ini ya. Kalau Anda recall the memory, di bulan Agustus ketika Fed rate itu masih di maksimumnya di 2,5, perkirakan peaknya itu di 3,27 untuk Februari tahun depan. Kondisinya sekarang 3,75 sampai peak 4%, peaknya di 4,88 Juni tahun depan. So within 3 months, dari Agustus sampai November, we are repricing sekitar 170 basis points. Dan berdasarkan angka inflasi yang tadi, market expect ketika Desember 2023 cuts 50 basis points dari peak di Juni, dan itu lebih panjang ya daripada the story-nya kan sekarang menjadi higher for a longer period of time. Dampaknya ini sebenarnya yang paling dirasakan oleh emerging market bonds. Kenapa? Karena volatility di front end rates itu luar biasa. Bayangkan kita reprice dari 3,27 ke 4,88 dalam tempo 3 bulan. Berarti volatility di rates kemudian diimbangi dengan kenaikan real yield di US. Ada 2 faktor, volatility in rates and kenaikan real yields, sehingga sentimen di risky asset itu memburuk. Going forward, kalau kita mau melihat perbaikan di market obligasi, volatility in rates harus menurun, kemudian real yield harus menurun. Kalau kita lihat di sini, first semester mungkin masih akan volatile karena we are not there yet. Desember kita masih ada FOMC diperkirakan 50 basis points, kemudian first Q mungkin naik 25 sampai 50 lagi. So pricingnya antara 475 sampai 50. Kemudian setelah itu cut going forward. Oke. Sekarang apakah itu good story apa tidak? This is a historical data ya, historical chart showing beberapa cuts yang sudah terjadi dalam 5 periode terakhir. Yang terakhir itu cuts di 2019. Ya. Tendensinya adalah on average market akan mulai bereaksi 200 trading days sebelum first cut. Jadi kalau misalnya cut nanti Desember 2023, ya berarti 200 trading days sebelumnya Maret. Maret mungkin market sudah mulai bereaksi. So we are seeing, probably seeing 10 years rate going down. Oke lah, kita mulai dengan simplistic approach aja lah. Kalau berdasarkan FOMC Summary of Economic Projections, ya, inflasi Fed Fund Rate 2023 5, 2024 4, 2025 3, and then heading toward the long-term neutral rate 2,5%. Oke. Kalau dari situ, fair value dari 10 years itu di berapa? Oke lah, there's a risk premium over Fed Fund Rate, dan kemudian yang 12 months atau 1 year bond rate di US akan bergerak mengikuti Fed Fund Rate. Jadi 12 months atau 1 year bond rate di US akan heading toward the 5, 4, 3, kemudian stabilize at 2,5. Fair value of 10 years should be in 3%. Kondisinya per hari ini di 3,68 atau 3,7 ranging in that period. So we are heading 70 atau 60 or 70 basis points upside in US Treasuries 10 years. Oke, itu simplistic approach ya. Anda kan masih bisa berargumen bahwa oke lah, probably the neutral rate in US is not probably 2.5%. This is a abnormal situation is going toward 3%. Even for 3%, yeah, the 10 years is not going to break the 4% again. Kemudian juga ada asumsi lain. Sekarang kan kurvanya inverted. Apakah Anda berpikir bahwa kurva akan semakin inverted dengan 10 years menuju ke 3%? Oke, itu argumen yang valid sebenarnya. Tetapi kembali ke asumsi kita tadi bahwa kita akan melihat tahun 2023 itu half-full, inflation is going to be in full control. So the neutral rate is going down toward what FOMC really wants. Oke, kita pegang satu ya. Asumsi dasarnya 10 years US Treasury will toward 3%. Indonesia bagaimana? Ada dua kritik ya, terutama dari foreign investors ke market bond Indonesia. Kalau kita lihat ya, dalam beberapa 2-3 tahun terakhir, itu kepemilikan asing kan turun terus ya di obligasi Indonesia, sempat ke puncaknya di hampir 40%, sekarang tinggal 15%. Yield sebenarnya stabil, real yield dibandingkan dengan peers stabil. There's no pressure on rating downgrade, so Indonesia is in good shape. Tapi why foreign is not coming? Oke lah, tadi kita part of the index, that's one story. Karena kalau secara global pertumbuhan fund yang tracking dari indeksnya memang tidak bertumbuh, ya memang kita tidak bertumbuh. Tetapi within the benchmark itself ya, Indonesia itu kan sebenarnya kalau indeks yang paling besar di track oleh bond investor adalah GBI, JP Morgan GBI yang Index, dan bobot Indonesia di situ 10% besar. Bobot Indonesia di GBI yang Index itu 10%. Tetapi kalau kita track kepemilikan fund yang tracking the GBI yang Index, mereka rata-rata underweight di rates, underweight di FX. Ini menarik nih. Kritik utama mereka adalah Indonesian bond is expensive. Why? Spread on US Treasury in the past itu hovering 400 sampai 600 basis points. Kalau misalnya sekarang 10 years Indonesia di 7%, kemudian US Treasury katakanlah di 4%, dan kalau average 400 sampai 600 berarti average-nya 500. On valuation basis, 10 years Indonesia should be 4 tambah 5, 9%. So current position nggak ada upside, downside-nya banyak. Buat apa saya beli Indonesian bonds? So I prefer to stay underweight in Indonesia. Okay, that's a valid approach ya. Tetapi most of them forgot that the story has changed in Indonesia. Kalau kita ingat pelajaran ilmu ekonomi atau economics 101 ya, Indonesia itu experiencing kan negative 2.5% of current account deficit. How to finance this one? Either through portfolio flow atau foreign direct investments. Oke lah, in the past, foreign direct investment di Indonesia itu sangat coming lah ya, ada masalah struktural, ada masalah infrastruktur di Indonesia, sehingga FDI cukup terbatas. Satu-satunya cara, you expect portfolio flow coming to Indonesia. How? Make the interest rate high. Oke, jadi secara ekonomi memang obligasi Indonesia itu didesain bunganya tinggi supaya investor asing datang. Karena we need to finance this 2.5% deficit. There is no way you gonna fund this because foreign direct investment, which is a more stable source of funds, is not coming to Indonesia. Not yet. Not yet. Tetapi seperti kembali ke cerita yang tadi disampaikan oleh Pak Chen, story-nya berubah. We are not experiencing a massive current account deficit anymore. We are heading toward current account surplus. Ya, even kalaupun ada yang say bearish scenario that the gas in Europe is stabilized, berarti batu bara akan turun, right? And artinya apa? Trade balance Indonesia akan merosot karena kontribusi batu bara di sana besar. Tetapi we are heading toward a nickel downstreaming. So we are go into a right direction that the current account surplus will be resilient going forward. So the assumption of 2.5% related to the spread in US Treasury is not valid. Ya, at least kita harus reprice lah. Kita harus reprice. Yeah. So the current spread of 320, I think is decent. Considering the current account surplus that we have right now. So, from this standpoint, katakanlah tadi base case-nya US Treasury 10 years di 3%, kemudian spread-nya stabilize di 300 sampai 320, that's the current level right now. 10 years probably is going toward 6 sampai 620. That's the bullish scenario. That's the bullish scenario. Okay, that's one critique. Another critique on rupiah. Kenapa? Karena when investors, foreign investors buy the Indonesian government bonds, they are exchanging the dollar into rupiah. So they are expecting that rupiah to appreciate. Tetapi kalau kita lihat yang sekarang, berapa ya? 15.700 melemah, terus menerus melemah. There is no point of foreign investors buying rupiah bonds if rupiah keep on depreciating. Oke, kritiknya masih bisa dijawab. Kalau story-nya kembali ke yang tadi, it will relate to DXY. Real in US is going down, DXY is going down. So we are bearish US dollar, strong rupiah, strong EM currencies lah, not necessarily rupiah, tapi strong rupiah. Kemudian kalau dilihat di sini, sampai Agustus ya sebenarnya relatif to peers, rupiah itu masih quite strong. Dan ketika Fed itu reprice di Agustus, kelihatannya ada move dari Bank Indonesia untuk let go di di outperformance. Proofnya dari mana? Kalau dilihat dari outstanding di NDF ya, dari Agustus sampai sekarang itu outstandingnya turun terus. Artinya BI memang sengaja membuat rupiah melemah. So we are in relatif sama dengan peers, sehingga sebenarnya tidak ada alasan bahwa mengatakan bahwa rupiah itu overvalue. So rupiah is fairly valued right now. Ini sebenarnya angka real effective exchange rate dari BIS ya, dan itu agak outdated. Kalau yang lebih update sih mestinya ya yang dari Citi ya. So the trend is rupiah is going toward the fair value. Nah, kalau rupiah is in the fair value and the bond is going toward appreciation, there is no reason that foreign investors not coming. Kenapa foreign investor itu penting ya? Buat kita regardless posisinya cuma 15%. Di sini saya tadi sempat berkenalannya dengan bapak-bapak dari banks, mungkin ada dari BSI, dari Bank DKI, mungkin ada dari Bank BRI barangkali. Saya sempat di sell side, buy side, sell side. I was on the trading floor as well. Kalau misalnya dengan tidak mengurangi rasa hormat saya kepada domestic investors ya, domestic investor itu kecenderungannya adalah buy and hold. Sementara kita di market butuh trading activity, karena kita akan mudah untuk rebalance our position. Nah, kalau misalnya lihat sekarang, kalau Bapak Ibu tanya ke banks, saya mau beli bond 20 tahun, ada yang quote harga nggak? Most necessarily secara umum mungkin ada yang quote harga, tapi bid offer spread-nya luar biasa. Ya. Kenapa? Liquidity is not there in the 20 years bond. Bapak Ibu di perbankan mungkin hanya main di 5 sampai 10 tahun. In the past, when foreign investors still there in Indonesia, ketika posisi mereka masih 35, masih 40%, it's so easy to trade the 20 years bond. Nah, kalau dampaknya apa? Kurvanya jadi aneh begini nih. Ini adalah ekspektasi kenaikan BI rate, ya, sehingga kurvanya bear steepening. 5 years bond continue to rise, the 10 years is stable. Nah, yang aneh kan di sini nih, 10 sampai 20. 10 tahunnya stabil, 20 tahunnya nggak kemana-mana. Karena memang di sini nggak ada lagi investornya yang aktif berdagang. That's why we really need foreign investor to come to Indonesia again. Kalau story-nya seperti itu tadi, ketika Fed pivot, kemudian China reopening, I'm quite optimistic bahwa next year is a bond year. Nah, kalau foreign coming, kemudian mereka extend the duration of the portfolio, wah ini bisa rally luar biasa ini.